Hello, hello. How's everything? Now we have another bits and pieces about what determine the value of the currency. What is the fair value of any currency to another currency? Let's take an example about the Egyptian pound to the dollar. How much shall the dollar be of Egyptian pounds? Yani $1 should equal to how many Egyptian pounds? What is the fair value? There is the value and the price. The price is something different than the value. The price is about supply, demand, scarcity, fear. All these will impact the price. The higher the demand, the higher the price, the lower the demand, or the higher the supply, the lower the price of the dollar in front of the Egyptian pound. This is the price mechanism. But what about the fundamentals? What really makes a difference to impact the value of the dollar to the Egyptian pound? For example, well, any currency is a piece of paper. The strength of this piece of paper is its ability to purchase goods and services, and also its ability not to lose a lot of value by time because of inflation. So the currency that is suffering from lower levels of inflation will lose value less than the currency will suffer from higher value of inflation. For example, the expected inflation in Egypt is in the range مثلا of 20% for the coming year, while in the US the expected inflation or the decrease in the purchasing power is only 2%. So fundamentally, which currency should be stronger? Definitely the currency with lower inflation rate. We have a very important rule called the international Fisher effect. The international Fisher effect depends on something called the relative purchasing power parity, which determines how much should the currency depreciate or lose value in front of another currency based on the expected inflation of each of the economies of those currencies. So, for example, the rule is you take the expected inflation in Egypt, for example, minus the expected inflation rate in the US, and you divide it by 1 plus the expected inflation in the US. And it will give you the expected depreciation in the Egyptian currency in front of the US currency. For example, let's do this. I made actually an Excel sheet talking about what should be the fair value of the Egyptian currency uh, by the end of 23 and general in 2024. And I actually posted this Excel sheet on my LinkedIn profile before the Ras Al Hikma deal by 20 days. At that time, the price of the dollar to Egyptian pound in the parallel market was more than 75. And I said it is totally overvalued. The fair value is like that. Now let us look at that. My expectations was for 2024 that the value of the dollar to Egyptian pound should be in the range of 47 to 48, on the expectations that the inflation rate of Egypt would average of a 25%, and the inflation in the US would average of 3%, having a depreciation of 21% in the Egyptian pound through this year. And I put my expectations for 2025 and 2026 of the inflation. But now we are in at the end of November 2024. Actually, the inflation rate in Egypt didn't go uh, lower as fast as we thought. So up till now, it's in the range of 27. So I might, if I can change now the inflation to 28% on average. See, the value, the depreciation of the currency increased from 21 to 24, leading a fair value of 48.95, which is actually more or less than the price now, which is around 50, $1 equal 50 EGP, which is now quite a stable situation where the currency has a price which is equal to its economic fair value. By 2025, on average, I was expecting the inflation to be 15%. Now I can change that to 20%. For the average value of the Egyptian pound through the coming year would be in 57 or 58. But this 57, 58 will not maybe according to the mechanism of supply and demand, maybe will be after the second half of 2025. Before that, might be lower than 55. By 2026, maybe the expected inflation could be in the range of 15%. So by 2026, at the end of 2026, maybe the fair value should be 64. Sometimes the government, if they have a lot of supply of dollars, they can fix the rate. But this is not the fair value. To give you an example, in the previous years after the Egyptian devaluation, the Egyptian currency devaluation in 2016, the rate the rate was in the range of 15.7, the price of the dollar to the Egyptian pound. But by time the value went to the favor of the dollar from 21 to 24 to 26 because the depreciation, the average inflation in Egypt was higher than the average inflation in US. So there is always a depreciation. The best thing, the best ever rate was 5% depreciation in the EGP as a fair value when the average inflation was 6% in Egypt while it was 1% in the US. In all cases, you lose value all the time in front of the dollar. Don't ever forget that because your inflation is always higher than the inflation of the US. Sometimes the government is able to fix a price if they have a supply, but in reality, the value keeps on going down as long as the inflation rate in Egypt is higher than the inflation rate in the US. So how can we control inflation? And what are the causes of inflation? This is the talk for the next video. Thank you very much. Have a good day.